Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making tomato soup from tomatoes from my garden. These are rinsed and stemmed, and they're mostly cherry tomatoes, and I do have some that are about the size of golf balls. You can use tomatoes that have a little damage to them, like this one here. It's perfectly fine. If it's too much damage and you got to cut some off, you can also do that. You want to put them in a pot. Here I have some frozen ones that as I harvest my tomatoes, I put them in a freezer bag after I've rinsed and pulled the stems off, and I just pop them in the freezer and I keep adding to that bag until I have enough to make the soup. And I'm just going to add these frozen ones to these ones that are not frozen. And this is about 2.5 quarts of tomatoes total. This is a cast iron pan that's coated in porcelain that I'll be using to cook them in. And your main ingredients is going to be tomatoes and baking soda. Your utensils, you're going to want a pot to cook them in. It could be also a crock pot. It doesn't have to be stovetop. Crock pot, maybe 4 hours on high, 5 hours on low, somewhere around in there. These are on the stove in a cast iron pan, so these are probably going to take about 3 or 4 hours as well. You're going to need a bowl and a strainer and a metal spoon. The strainer, you want to have the screen type strainer. You don't want a colander that you rinse pasta in. You want a screen. So the optional ingredients would be salt and pepper. Garlic and onion powder can also be optional in this recipe. But your must-have ingredients are only tomatoes and baking soda. Those are the only ingredients that you must have for this recipe. So I'm going to turn the burner on to about medium to get started. And then as it heats up, I'll be turning it down. You want to bring your tomatoes to a very, very low, mild simmer. And you're just going to let them sit there and stew with the lid on because you don't want to lose any moisture for about 2 hours. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the lid on. I've already turned my burner on medium. And I will see you back in about 2 hours. Okay, so it has been 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off the pot and see where we're at. Okay, so it has been 2 hours. And these tomatoes are cooked down pretty good. There's still some of the bigger ones, like golf ball size ones, that are still somewhat intact. Some of the cherry tomatoes are too. But it should look like this, where they're just kind of falling apart. And that's all right. But we're going to continue stewing these for a couple more hours because we want to get this to where it's good and smushed. So we're going to put the lid back on this, and I'm going to come back in about another, I'm going to say an hour and a half. I'm going to come back in an hour and a half, and we will check on these tomatoes again. So I'll see you in an hour and a half. Okay, it's been about an hour, and the tomatoes are done, so we can now go on to the next step of making this tomato soup. So I'm going to turn my burner off, and then I'm going to bring the pan over here on my cutting board so you can see what the tomatoes look like. Turn my burner off. Okay. So this is what the tomatoes look like. They are like totally smashed, and that's what you want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to strain through this strainer here the liquid and the pulp into this pan. or this bowl here. And I've got a 1 cup measuring cup. You can use anything, a soup ladle, anything that you have, but I'm going to use this 1 cup measuring cup. I'm just going to scoop some of these tomatoes in here, like this. And then with the spoon, I'm going to then press these tomatoes through the strainer. And you gently press. You don't want to press too hard, but you're going to press all the pulp and the liquid out. And what you should be left with in this strainer is just seeds and the tomato skins. I'm going to strain this out, push this all through. This is so worth it. I mean, right now, all we have is just tomatoes. There's no additives, no preservatives. So much better than canned. And what you have on the underside of this screened strainer is all this pulp. And you just want to scrape it off into your bowl. And you want to keep doing this until you've done it with all your tomatoes. Now the seeds and the skins, you can either throw this in the garbage, or if you compost, you can totally save this for your compost. And I compost for my garden, so I'll be dumping this into a pan right here to compost my stuff here, my skins. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing this part, this step, and I will meet you back here when I'm done for the next step. So now I am back, and I've got everything strained, and this is thickened up because of the pulp that we had strained through there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this back into my pan, because we're going to have tomato soup tonight. But what you can do at this point, if you're not going to have tomato soup, you can cool this and put it in freezer containers and freeze it to use later, to have tomato soup later. Or you can use it as a tomato broth. Or you can put it in the refrigerator and chill it for tomato juice. I mean, there's a couple different things that you can do with this. So I'm going to heat this back up a little bit. It's still warm, but it's cooled down. So I'm going to heat this back up a little bit, because we're going to have tomato soup. And I also have some French bread that I cut and I've turned into garlic bread that we're going to have with this soup tonight. So once this heats up, I mean, it's warm, but yeah. Fresh tomatoes. Heat this back up. Now we can season this with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. So we'll put a little bit of salt in here. Or, sorry, this is pepper. Pepper. And about a handful, maybe about 3/4 teaspoon of salt, or less, depending on how much salt you want in here. I'm going to use a spoon. Then some garlic powder, maybe 3/4 teaspoon of that. Bring that up here. And then some onion powder. About 1/2 teaspoon, some, whatever your taste, to taste. Now, the one ingredient that you have to put in here, or should, is baking soda. Baking soda is going to neutralize the acids in the tomato soup. Tomatoes have a high acidity, and they can leave behind heartburn. So you put baking soda in your tomato soup, and that will neutralize the acids, and you won't end up with heartburn. You won't taste the baking soda, and it will totally neutralize it. So I'm going to put about maybe 3/4 of a teaspoon in here. You don't really need a lot. No, like that. Now when you put it in, it's going to foam up, fizz up, but it will die down. The fizzing is the reaction of the baking soda with the tomatoes. And it will die down. So I'm just going to let this sit on the burner for 15 to 20 minutes just to kind of get the seasonings that I put in here cook in a little bit, and it should be done. I'm going to put my bread in the oven, toast that up, have some garlic bread and some tomato soup. And this is going to keep foaming because of the baking soda, but it will die down and you won't taste it. So I will be back when this is done. I'll see you in about probably 15 minutes. Okay, the garlic bread is done. The soup is done. All we need to do is put a little pat of butter in the soup, and we're good to go. So I'm going to take, glasses, turn the burner off. And I'm going to put the butter in here. Let that melt up. This is going to be so good. Just going to let that melt up. This is nice and thick. Okay, it's all nice and melted in there. We are going to serve it up and give it a try. Nice and thick. It's like really, really steamy. That is so good. A little hot, but it's so good. This is going to go great with my garlic bread. Perfect, nice comfort meal on a nice cool day. Thank you for watching. I hope you made yourself a good pot of tomato soup with some garlic bread. Even toasted cheese sandwiches would be great with this. And I will see you next time. Please like, subscribe, and share this video to anyone that you think it might be helpful to. Thank you. See you next time.